what are some of the differences between a transcript and a blog post that make them more powerful for the end user and for you getting more reach from your podcast?
Right. Yeah. So it's a good question. So this is like a question that comes up a lot with what we do. And I know I guess some people consider this a little controversial because
Cool.
there are a lot of podcasts that just say, oh, I get a transcription and, so I'm taken care of. My podcast is search optimized. There are a lot of good reasons to have transcript. I'm not saying don't offer it, don't include it. I mean, for just one of the most basic is for people who are hard of hearing and might want an exact record of the conversation. So there's a lot of reason to have a transcript, but it's probably not doing as much for search as I think a lot of people expect that it is. So transcript is a word for word record of the conversation. And there are people who like reading them. I personally don't. I just find it's a lot to get through. And, I think sometimes if a person's listened to an episode, there's certainly a use case they might go back and like search for a certain part of the transcript. So again, those are useful things. But when we talk about discoverability, a transcript is not written in such a way that it's responding to a question. So going back to what we were just discussing, it's harder for Google or any search engine really to know, okay, what question is this piece of content asking, because it isn't framed that way. It's also, transcripts don't tend to be structured in a way that is SEO friendly. And by that, I mean, you need to have H2 headers on the page, which helps signal to the search engine, like, what is this about? It helps it categorize it. So there's a lot of technical things that make it, not very search friendly. And, I think my point is I'm just trying to make the case that it's a good thing to have, but if you want new people coming to your podcast via search, you do want to take the recording and turn it into an article that answers a question, that is optimized for text, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. Like a lot of podcasts, in the beginning, they'll ask the person to talk about their background. And sometimes they'll spend, 10 minutes of a 30-minute conversation on their career journey and where they've been. And that can be interesting in audio. But when you think about how that would fit in an article, that's going to be like 2 sentences. Because when you're reading an article, and let's say it's about the 5 ways to repurpose a video, you want to get into those 5 ways. At the top, you want to know, okay, where does this information come from? Is the person qualified? And again, takes a sentence or 2 to explain that. But so that's kind of the value of having an article that, someone has structured and edited so that it's really geared towards reading, versus a transcript, which again is, it's a full record of the conversation.
This makes me think of, so I know you have a background in journalism. It makes me think of basically the predominant format for podcasts now is interview podcasts. Not all of them are like that, but a lot of them are.
Right.
And I'm thinking back to when newspapers were the predominant news source and information source for a lot of us. If you were a journalist and you wanted to interview someone influential from your community, in order to get information from them, you're going to interview them, right? And you're going to try to get some hot takes from them. Maybe you get some insights. But the last thing you would ever do is take that transcript from the conversation and just slap it on a newspaper and send it out. That would be the most boring thing you ever read.
Well, people wouldn't pay for that.
People wouldn't pay for it. No, you take snippets from it. You create a piece around it that helps, focus on the meat of the conversation. And so this process that we're talking about right now, like this has been replicated over decades, hundreds of years in journalism. So I'm curious maybe what your background in journalism has how it's prepared you for this process that you go through with repurposing podcasts and blog content.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that into the conversation, because it's, I think it's no coincidence that I come from that background. And then, I've built a company around taking interviews and turning them into, blog posts, articles, or whatever it is, because that is 100% like part of the process. And what I say sometimes when speaking with clients is, and to illustrate the difference between a transcript and an article is, the piece that we would create based on your podcast. It's as if a journalist was there. You were doing this in front of a live studio audience, and it's similar to the article that they would write, based on the discussion, because that's a part of it. It's listening to the conversation and then writing up the information that is most relevant to the audience. So journalism is absolutely one part of it. I kind of think of there as being two pieces to it. So the first being journalism, which is, I would say, relaying what happened in a conversation. So who was there? What did the two people discuss? But then the other piece, and this is like with the different writers that we work with, I like to say we're looking for unicorns, right? Because we like them to have the journalism, but then there's also the content marketing side, which is, it's different because it is thinking more like a marketer, and it's thinking about positioning. So who's going to be reading this, and how do you kind of make it more appealing? There's so much content out there. To make your content stand out, someone's got to, like, within the first few seconds of looking at it, they've got to realize, this is for me, right? This is answering my question. And so that's something that I don't think journalism always does, because typically journalists are dealing with news. And so you don't have to sell news to people in the same way you sell something that's more evergreen, because people want to know what happened. But so we want to tell people what happened, but we also want to help them see how it's going to help them and how it's going to solve their problem.